Well, recently somebody sent me an article, and the title is Canada Plans Regulation for Crypto Mining via Excess Hydroelectric Power.
Yeah.
Now, that immediately caused alarm for me because our data center, of course, is Winnipeg, Canada, run by 100% hydropower. And I immediately stopped everything I was doing and figured, I need to take a look at this. So, everybody can pretty much attest to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. There's been a lot of bad news lately. The value has come down quite considerably, and the last thing we need is bad news. So let me preface by saying, Bitcoin is at the core of cryptocurrency. It's at the core of this entire community. Everything, all roads lead back to Bitcoin. So I don't want Bitcoin to come down, and I find it difficult to publicly slam Bitcoin and proof of work cryptocurrencies because, quite frankly, I use it all day, every day, and I've been using it since the beginning. Really, since 2011 when we started mining in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned. Number one is a miner. Number two is a user. And number three for the future of cryptocurrency, because at the end of the day, and you brought it up a while back, all roads lead back down to equipment. It comes down to power. It comes down to resources. We think of cryptocurrency as this digital sphere that's sitting up in a cloud somewhere, but at the end of the day, it comes down to electricity. And so, if you don't mind, I kind of want to just share my screen with you real quick and show you some of these articles. You mind if I jump in?
Yeah. Before we jump there, let me just quickly just ask you something. So I know that electricity is what fuels Bitcoin and proof of work, right? So that's what's happening. It's
Absolutely.
actually, and it's always been this way. And I remember a few months ago talking to someone, about an accountant of all people, about the implications of currency, currency and economics. But what became apparent from the conversation was that Bitcoin, being so energy intensive, right, is really what we call the canary in the coal mine, because
Absolutely.
Because it's so intensive. If there's anything happening in electric power that's impacting the industry, Bitcoin is obviously the one that's going to be impacted the most. But what I was interested in is, okay, so Bitcoin is very electricity intensive, but yet the alternative is proof of stake, which is it correct when I say that the electricity load is so much lower? Can you
Absolutely.
Can you just jump in there quickly?
Yeah, proof of stake is what we do. Takes 0.0004% the amount of power that proof of work does, and that's pretty amazing. I have talked many times the fact that our machines are web servers. Our machines take 2 amps. That's small. We have a house 100% off the grid on solar, and I can run one of our web servers for 50 hours on one battery without sun. So that's really, really efficient. But it's actually bigger than that. Satoshi started this whole movement behind Bitcoin, and if you look at the original vision of Satoshi, it was decentralization. It was allow the small man and woman to thrive. And so the initial vision for Bitcoin mining was that everybody would become a miner. You could mine on a general laptop, and we did. In the very beginning, you could mine on just a small little laptop, and then it increased to a faster machine, And because Bitcoin proof of work mining is competitive and not collaborative like proof of stake, you're fighting against other miners to generate the next Bitcoin. So you have to build a faster and a faster and a faster computer. And with that said, what I mean by that is that what's happening is the flip opposite of the initial vision. Initial vision was decentralization, that everybody could mine, that you could run on a general computer. And of course, the logarithm is written so it's going to get more and more difficult. But what's happening is as it's getting more and more difficult, it's taking a faster and a faster and more expensive computer. So where we're going with it is on a computing level is that it's going to be eventually in the hands of those that hold the supercomputers, the quantum computers.
Mm, mm,
Now, who owns the quantum computers? Google, Amazon.
mm,
There's no way that we as a general man and woman are going to be able to compete with these mega corporations that are going to own these supercomputers and the quantum computers.
mm,
So
mm,
as Bitcoin gets more and more and more and more difficult, and as it takes more and more computing power, it becomes more and more centralized, and it defeats the purpose of decentralization. But back to power again, it's the same scenario, because as it's taking more and more power to generate and to mine Bitcoin, what's happening is becoming more and more centralized, because you have to have a heck of a lot of money to be able to mine on the backbone of power companies. I know a lot of miners, very, very big miners worldwide. They're pretty much one of the biggest miners. And there's one guy I've been communicating with, and extraordinarily intelligent gentleman. He is utilizing the excess power of a power station,
mm,
and he's using the heat and he's converting the heat over into power. Now, I think that's phenomenal. I fully support that. And I think that's what he's doing is wonderful. He's basically recycling heat, and he's recycling power that essentially would have been wasted, and he's mining with it. But where's that going to go? How far is that? Is it going to wind up being where you're only going to be able to mine on the backbone of power companies?
mm,
And what happens when it becomes even more difficult and even more power? Is it going to be nuclear power plants?
mm,
Who owns the nuclear power plants?
mm, mm. Right.
So again, it comes back to it flies in the face, or defeats the purpose of decentralization. If the intention was to have a decentralized community, then it's not going to work when we need computers that are faster and faster and faster, and we're competing to build a faster and faster machine that takes more and more and more electricity, that centralizes it into a smaller and smaller point, to only the few that have a tremendous amount of money to build these massive data centers, to build these massive, arrays of equipment on the backbones of power stations. It
Mm,
just,
mm.
it's, to me,
Yeah, and I
it's
see
heading
and I
for,
see that. Of course, power has always been a, you know, the old days talking about free energy and all these kind of utopian ideas. But you know what? There seems to be a competition right now, and I saw from one of the articles, and I think it's one you'll highlight as well now, is that they're starting to raise the narrative about the machine. Of course, we know the machine's competing with the human, right, on a certain
yeah,
level. But now it
right.
seems like now the human and the machine, or let's specifically say the miner and the citizen, are now in competition for the power companies' surplus energy. so
Exactly.
so what's happening in that space? That's a sort of a shocking revelation that that the miners are sort of being treated as sort of a black sheep, right, of energy usage at the moment. So what's up with that? Maybe you can sort of dive into that a bit.
Sure. Well, the couple articles I want to share essentially shows that miners have been flocking to the places on the planet where, number one, you have a stable government, you have stable power, you have very cool temperatures, and you have very inexpensive renewable power. So they've been flocking to these types of regions. And in the beginning, these jurisdictions have been opening their arms to that, because they've been under the impression that the miners are going to bring a tremendous amount of new jobs into their area. Hey, allow us to utilize your power. We're going to bring a tremendous amount of jobs into your town, and we're going to stimulate your economy.
Mm,
Well, what's happening is kind of the opposite, because mining, essentially, you don't need a heck of a lot of employees. It's
mm,
primarily machine run. You need a couple engineers to be able to understand how to build a network, how to maintain it, how to do your security. But you need a few specialized people to run a giant mining operation. You don't need a lot of employees. So what's happening is they're sucking a tremendous amount of electricity off the grid, and they're exploiting their electricity grids, and the people of the communities are having their electricity bills go up $100, $200, $300, $400 a month.
mm,
Well, most people cannot afford for their electric bill to triple.
mm, mm. Is
You
this
know, a lot of people
this
on
proof of work
fixed income.
mining that's so energy intensive? That's what you're talking about, right?
It's proof of work mining is extremely energy intensive and getting more and more energy intensive every day. And when you put a stress on a power grid and you jeopardize it for your community, and you have a lot of people in your community on a fixed income that really depend upon every dollar going a long way, and
Mm.
you drive their electric bill up 300-400 times,
Yeah.
they're not gonna be happy about it.
So if I had to quantify that, so I mean, all the computers running in the world. I mean, my laptop right here, your PC right there. We are all using power. We're all using processing power, right? But
Right.
what you're saying now is with mining, there's a lot more machines coming onto the grid that's busy 24/7 churning away, processing and sucking up all the energy. And there's no real human behind using that. It's just computers and processors going online. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, let me just re-clarify. This is proof of work
Yeah.
mining.
Right.
This is Bitcoin and a number of other ones. We do proof of stake. It's quite a bit different,
Right.
and so we're using a fraction of the amount of power. But yes, it's not it's not a industry where you need a tremendous amount of workers in a factory
Mm.
working together to build something, creating a
Mm.
tremendous amount of jobs. It's a small amount of high-end engineers that are buying equipment, building a network, putting it on a network, and it's primarily machines running themselves, but
Mm.
generating or using a tremendous amount of electricity in the meantime.
Yeah, that's interesting because yeah, that's very interesting. I think we could dive into this later, maybe in a subsequent talk that you and I have about the energy usage of proof of stake versus proof of work, because I don't see a lot of people talking about that distinction. They're talking about crypto, they're talking about crypto mining, but even on the news channels, those who are talking about it aren't really making the distinction between proof of work, proof of stake, and just what you said right now. The one is very energy intensive, and the other one uses a fraction of the amount of energy required to do the processing.
Well, I'm going to do a video next week. I'm going to take one solar panel, one charge controller, one battery. I'm going to hook it up to one of our mining machines, and I'm going to show you how efficiently it runs.
Oh,